Okay. So I think that the main point, is that these people got called by Christ. We get called by Christ. We get called to our initial salvation by Christ. That work is done, that is done for us. It's Jesus that calls us to our repentance. It's Jesus who, teaches us his word, who baptizes us in his water and in his spirit, and who gives us the strength and the wisdom to walk in his way. And in that way, part of it is to call others, to call others, just like, Philip told Nathaniel, we found the one spoken of by Moses, come and see. And that's however we word our own particular message, it's still that message. Let me tell you, what is it? 1 Peter 3, it says, when asked, be prepared to give a testimony for the hope that you have within you. It's not to go out and beat people over the head with it. It's when you're asked. People say, I noticed something about you, and you're weird. Are you a Christian? No. A joke. Everybody make sure your microphones are on.
Somebody asked that question, that's a problem. It's easy for you to say, well, I know a guy.
Yeah. I got it. But you see that through the whole, time. And then, so we were talking last week, a little bit about what makes an apostle, a capital A apostle, versus a disciple, or versus, you have other people called apostles who, they use the grammar with the little a, in the scriptures. And so there seems to be a difference there, but I think everybody has the same call, as we're like, if we're not full-time missionaries, that's what a lot of people will say today. An apostle today would be a missionary, someone who gets sent out to, you pick a country that needs missionaries. Okay, so those Christians in Africa now are sending, missionaries here because we need it, because we've lost, but I don't think most people today understand the gospel, are really getting exposed to the gospel, that they're Christians by association. And so that's what I think that an apostle, would be probably modern day. And that's those guys that we saw being sent out, even to where it got to the apostle, Apostle Paul. So were you going to say something, Larry? I saw you grab your microphone. Blue light? Can you guys hear Larry? Say 1, 2, 3.
We can't hear with microphones.
You don't hear, hang on. I got these on here. What's off? Okay, that's off because. Okay. I'll repeat his question while Deacon Joe looks for our magical. Right. 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 Yeah, and you're right. Sends out teachers or helps them go set up seminaries in their places. The churches in Africa far outnumber the church populations in America. The Lutheran church in Nigeria is bigger, I think, than any Lutheran church here in America. you know? And, there's probably something to, you get too comfortable. And you don't think, it's not even a matter of making a conscious choice. I don't need Jesus. This thing goes away from the.
Yeah, this, at one of the pastors' conferences I went to, it came up about missionaries coming to the United States. And we have quite a few, as a matter of fact, in our own district, in Orange County, as an example. Korea has sent people, missionaries to the United States, to Orange County, what is called Mesa, but they're sending them here because they feel like they're not getting served by the local churches. And it was on our side.
Are you guys hearing, you're hearing? that?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Fix whatever. Thank you. Not only can this guy preach, he can fix our electronics. Anyway, yeah, so, yeah, that's the funny thing. I mean, America really needs to catch on fire again. And I don't know, maybe you don't. You look at Western Europe, they're dead to Christ. I mean, all the churches have been turned into mosques or coffee shops. And, the big Roman Catholic churches are tourist stops. I mean, they'll have a priest there, they may get 20 people on a Sunday morning to come, but it's the tourists that come to see those great cathedrals. So that push to the southern hemisphere, maybe where it's, maybe where it's at, so. I don't have the answer other than what we do here is we sit and the church, our church anyway, does what the church is meant for. We read, I think it's in Ephesians 4, is to equip the saints. Okay? And then equipping is like, I mean, it's one to build us up and make us strong in the faith, but it's to equip us to go out and give the message. Our sign, I don't know how faded it is, we probably need a new one. That little sign that you're driving out that says you're now entering the mission field. Right. We need to take that to, we need to take that to heart, and that's one thing that I like that Pastor Skip added, that mission prayer, right before the benediction, to kind of remind us, we don't want to get so, well, where we just say it. We want to think about it. Now that we've heard the word, now that we've, confessed our faith, now that we've, partaken in the Lord's Supper, whatever we've done in service, heard His word. Now we've got that mission prayer that says, do something with it, like that. And we just need to remember that. Joe.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So big actions is not.
And I don't think that those of us who come to church every week, sit in the service, sit in the class, involve ourselves in other church activities, I don't think that we neglect our faith, but I just think we just need to take one step further off the church property with it, okay, so. Anyway, that wasn't in my notes, but. So, on your handout, I'm trying to think how to do this, because I may want to go a couple of weeks with the apostles. I'm trying to think, it's like, work my way through this life of Christ thing is, maybe in some places we handle things by segments, so, when we get to, the call of the apostles, let's talk about the apostles, because these are the people that supported Jesus in his ministry. He shouldn't say he couldn't have done it, but he couldn't have done it without people, helping them and doing the things that, doing the things that they did. When we get to the Sermon on the Mount, maybe we look at other, at the same time, look at other sermons that Jesus did, and kind of keep them group. You get to, where Jesus gives the Lord's Prayer. We look at the prayers that Jesus, prayed and stuff like that. So I'm working on that with this part here about the apostles, because I come across interesting stuff. But I've got the apostles listed there. I don't want to miss anybody online. I wasn't looking if anybody had their hand up. But so the apostles are listed there. So we have a good number of them are, familiar. Simon Peter. Okay, I think everybody kind of knows him. His name was Simon. He was a fisherman from the town of Bethsaida. He became one of Jesus's closest disciples. Seems like he's like the spokesman for the group. He's known to be bold. He always, they say, slip his mouth, but he always has something to say, even if it's the wrong thing at the wrong time. He's impulsive, cut off Malchus's ear, in the garden. Boldly stated that he would not deny Jesus like those other ones are going to do when Jesus was saying, you're all going to scatter. He's not me, Lord. He was the one who, when Jesus was washing people's feet, said, I don't need my feet washed by you. Jesus makes a statement, something to the effect of, if you don't do this, you're not getting in the kingdom. And he said, oh, pour the water all over me then. So, I mean, that's the kind of guy that Peter, Peter was. It seems like what we know about Peter is just the things that you read in the Bible. Now, he's got an extensive kind of biography or whatever you want to call it going on, because he's got all that time with Jesus. And then he's prominent in the first 9-10 chapters of the book of Acts. I mean, that's about that Jerusalem ministry. Obviously, he had run-ins with the Apostle Paul, because we see that in the book of Galatians, where Peter would do all the right things as far as Christians go with the Gentiles. The faith is all open to you until the Judaizers show up from Jerusalem, and then he changes tables, because as a Jew he can't eat with the goyim, and so he moves over to the table, and Paul takes him to task, for that. Yeah, and which is funny, because this shows you how hard-headed we all are to learn a lesson. Because before that, remember the story, Cornelius, the Roman centurion, he's a what do they call him? God believer, God follower. Yeah, you're not quite a Jew, you're not a Christian. You just, you recognize God. You recognize kind of the God of Israel and all that. And so he's praying, and God sends the angel of the Lord to Peter's house, or he sends it to them to tells Cornelius to send his guys to Peter's house. But Peter's up on his roof, and the angel's telling him, you need to go to the Gentiles' house and preach to them. And he goes, I don't do that. I've never eaten any unclean food. And he's in a trance, and the big sheet gets lowered down with all the unclean animals on it. And God says, don't call unclean what I've called clean. And that's supposed to tell Peter it's okay to go to the Gentiles, to associate with the Gentiles. And he goes and he does it. He preaches to Cornelius. Cornelius and his household become saved. But then it's later on, when they're dealing with with the Gentiles later on, that, I'm gonna get in trouble, I have to change, change table. So, Peter was probably us. Average person. Yeah, just the average person. It's funny because you think of, I guess you think of these guys as saints, and when you look at the Roman paintings or the middle ages paintings, you know, they all have the halo over their head, they're all kind of looking holy. But these were just regular, you know, they were just regular guys and Larry.
He was a regular guy, but he had a sword on his side. Why did he have that? He was a zealot. He was,
That was the other sign.
oh, I thought you said,
Zealot.
okay, never mind,
Yeah.
okay.
No, Simon
No.
Peter.
No, yeah,
You know, Jesus told them to, one time he told them. not
Said he
to
was
take
on-
weapons with them.
Next time he said, take it.
And the next time he told them, sell what you have and buy yourself a sword. You know, depends on the, you know, depends on the circumstance. But I take back, because Simon Peter did have a weapon on him.
he was a zealot.
So, but you know, but by the same token, I don't know that carrying weapons, I you know, you could. Whole bunch of reasons why you carry them, maybe back in that day, wild beasts, or you got to cut an apple with a little stick, or. I don't know. You guys can go in the blinds.
I've always thought that man Peter was really a good shot with that doggone sword.
He was.
I'll forget the year. Yeah,
That's
but
all he got with his ear, yeah.
I think he's trying for the head. He just been.
going through the whole head, yeah. So. Anyway, so then, you know, then we got Andrew. And, you know, Andrew I talked about a little bit last week, because it said Andrew was Peter's brother. Andrew was the first one to get the call, and he called Peter. You know, I mean, imagine if he would have kept it to himself. Well, I can't imagine, but I mean, just imagine if Andrew said, hey, it's really cool. You know, we're followers of John the Baptist, and now we see the one that John the Baptist is talking about. Really cool. And then he goes off into some hippie commune by himself. And would you never hear of Peter? I don't know. I mean, you know, it's all speculation, but you know, makes you think what a role someone, you know, plays. And Andrew's comment may have been very casual. Just a casual thing. Hey, Peter, let me tell you what I heard. Let me tell you what I saw. Let me tell you what I met. You know, and you know, just talking over lunch. You know, and I mean, you know, that's one thing about reading the Bible. You never get that inflection in voices or the emotion that goes, goes with it. You can tell. He may have run up to Peter, grabbed him by the shoulders, shook him a little bit, and said, "I got something to tell you." We don't know. But he told them. So he was also a fisherman, first disciple called by Jesus. Let's see. You got James, the son of Zebedee. You got James, the son of Zebedee, and John, the son of Zebedee. You know? So would they be John Zebedee and James Zebedee? John and James Z. You know? They could have been rap artists. You know? No, but Zebedee is their father. You know, these guys were fishermen also. You know, and the encounter that we see is they're sitting in the boat with Dad, just doing their fishing stuff that they do. Jesus is strolling along the beach. He's walking along Rotary Park there. And he sees them out in a kayak. Yeah. And he says, "Follow me." And they go, "See ya, Pops." So that's what the story says. I don't think it worked that way. I think they all knew each other ahead of time, you know, like that. And I think they probably knew who Jesus was, but now he's given them that call to discipleship. You know, when he says that. I mean, I can't imagine that strange. Think about it. You're out there fishing at the park. Some guy walks by us. Even gives you a little bit of information. I'm the new Messiah. Follow me. You going?
Maybe the fish weren't right. Maybe the fish weren't right.
Well, you gotta use Deacon Deacon Joe's technique with the cord you were talking about getting the fish out of the water, or getting Whatever they were.
The baby.
Debate, that's what it was, yeah. Anyway, so they were, now, we'll get to it a little bit later, but James was like one of the first apostles killed. Run through with a sword. Now, here's the thing, as far as what we know about these guys, you know what it says, and even the part where I said, I think that they knew Jesus ahead of time. I don't have a biblical backing, I see you, Ray, hang on a second. I don't really have a biblical backing for it. It just seems like, as we see later on, Jesus making like second calls to guys that he's already, called. But people go out on a limb. Maybe this is what Ray is going to say. Go ahead and say what you're going to say, Ray.
Well, I think things were different back then when John the Baptist and the apostles or these people were expecting Jesus, a Messiah, to come to them and everything. So when Jesus shows up and he says, "Follow me," and then he produces all these miracles and he gives them the power to remove bad spirits out of people's lives and stuff like that. I mean, that strengthened their faith that they were willing to die for it. Now we're waiting for Jesus' second coming, and we want to go and witness and test and bring our testimony to other people to bring them to faith. And it's different from what they had to what we have now, isn't it?
Well, I agree with everything you said, except for the part about when he said, "Follow me." If that's all he said, what gets you out of the boat? So he hadn't shown them miracles yet, and he hadn't done, given the teachings, all the things that you mentioned after that would strengthen their faith. He hadn't said that yet. Or he had, and they tucked it away, and then they got the call, later on. We don't know. I mean, that's the point that I'm making. I know that Ray sent me a video about Peter, and it was kind of a dramatized version, but and I heard it somewhere else also, is that they said, well, they had a big fishing business. They had a wholesale business and they had a retail business in Jerusalem. I don't know where they get that.
Yeah, where's that from?
No, I don't know where it may be true. I mean, somebody may have, look, I got the sign off the store here in Jerusalem. It says John and James Z fish store. I don't know, but I'm just saying, we just know what we know. Other people want to kind of fill in, and it doesn't make a difference. I mean, it doesn't make a difference one way or the other. If they had a big retail business or they didn't have a retail, doesn't matter. It's just the idea of people kind of fill in the blanks. So you have to be careful when you're, when you're doing it. So, missing anybody? Anybody else want to say? We got Philip, and we heard about Philip today. My note here says he was from Bethesda, was among the early disciples called by Jesus, known for his encounter with the Greek seekers who wanted to see Jesus. Jesus also played a role in the feeding of the multitudes by questioning how could they provide enough food. Remember, Jesus said, you got to remember the story. Jesus was preaching all day long, and then the disciples came up and said, send these guys home, it's getting late. And Jesus said, no, let's feed them here. And they go, what you talking about? We don't feed them here. We don't have any food.
Sounds like a rib dinner.
Yeah. No, we don't have any food. We can't feed this many, people. And then Jesus says, oh yeah, watch this. Okay, so Philip was the one that even, I think I've said this a long time ago about people, even if some of these people just walk on stage, do their thing and walk off stage, they've done a big deal, because even if Jesus needed somebody to ask how you gonna do this? So he could tell everybody how he's gonna do it and then do it. You know, I mean, can you imagine Philip doesn't say anything, Jesus is going. Any questions? I mean, anybody want to know something about this? You know, what we're gonna do if we keep them, you know, if we're gonna keep them here. So then we got Bartholomew. I don't know between those ones. Got Bartholomew, who's also called Nathaniel, and Nathaniel was the one who was in Deacon Joe's you know, sermon today. He initially expressed skepticism about Jesus, but later became a follower. He's mentioned in the Gospel of John, particularly in the account that we heard, you know, today. But then after that, you don't hear much. You know, you don't hear much, you know, from him. We got Matthew, who's also, oh, the Bartholomew is Nathaniel. We talked last week about why these guys may have multiple names, just like we do, you know, do today. So Matthew was also known as Levi. Here's a tax collector. How much are tax collectors loved by the Jews in these stories? How much do they love to hear? You know? But he's a tax collector. I could probably use one of those guys on my staff. Yeah, I think what he's done is he's getting this variety going, different kinds of people, so that you know, so that people won't say, hey, you've just chosen rich guys, you've just chosen affluent guys, you've just chosen people that were temple priests or whatever. He goes the opposite way, picking the common kind of people. And all these people that he's picking, he's not picking in Jerusalem. He's picking up in the Galilee region, up in the north, you know, up in the north part of the country. But Matthew's another one. So Matthew, what's it say? Matthew's sitting at the tax table or whatever it's called. Jesus walks up and says, "Follow me." Now, real tax men would say, "Have you paid your taxes?" Yeah, so again, there must have been some interaction because it says, got up from his tax table and followed him. Then invited him to his house for dinner with all of his tax collector friends. I mean, these stories, when you look into them, you know, are just, you know, just amazing that these people do this. Deacon Joe in the message today talking about you know, Eli and Samuel, because it's not necessarily our fault that we don't hear the voice of God. We hear a voice, we don't recognize it. Maybe we need some more training in that. Maybe we need to stay alert. I mean, because you take Samuel. I mean, he's there. I don't remember what's in the story how old, but he's a kid. You know, and he hears a voice, you know, and he just thinks that it's Eli calling because he's living in Eli's tent or temple or whatever it is. But he hears the voice and he goes to where he knows that the voice has come. Hey, it's just me and him in his tent here. And Eli says, "No, not me." And then it happens again. He goes, "Nope, not me." And then I forgot the story. Who told him? Was it Eli? It was the mom wasn't there. You know, so it's probably Eli. You know, told him, "Hey, next time, answer this way." You know, "Hey, Lord, I hear you." Like that. And so all of a sudden now you get focused. And then Samuel spent the rest of his life knowing God's voice. You know, the apostles spent the rest of their lives knowing God's voice. You know, and so now in modern days, like today, one, it's hard to hear God's voice because there's just so much activity, you know, that goes on, and we're distracted all the time. In fact, probably the biggest harm to Americans is that we don't know how to be comfortable in silence. We be silent and still. When we have a moment of silent and still, what do? Turn on the TV or turn on the radio, put on a headset. We do, don't we? I'm not the only one. Well, we get uncomfortable with that silence and stillness. Like that, and so what I think what we need to do is, I don't know how you turn, I'm not Dr. Phil, I don't. Do your microphone. Hudson.
You know, you still get that ringing in the, you know, you still, there's no silence.
That's one time that you don't care about the ringing in your house or something.
So many people ask me, doxology moved.
Yeah, I'm not saying that we have to go, get in silent or something like that, but I think we just need to know. I probably just need to tone myself down a little bit so I can hear God's voice, if I do the jokes.
Yeah, I'm just an observation, it's my opinion. It appears those people have a receptivity to someone saying, I hear a voice, or I hear the voice of the Lord, maybe because their connection to God was closer or whatever. Today, if you go around saying you hear voices, they put you away.
But I think people do hear God's voice. I think people today hear God's voice clearly and they act on it. And it may be the same percentage of folks that back in those days heard God's voice. Yeah, you gotta watch out with the Bible. The Bible compresses time. People say, why don't we see the miracles that we saw in the book of Acts? Everybody want to see the miracles like see in the book of Acts? Book of Acts, I think that after chapter, I'm guessing this is an old thought that I used to teach. Right? After chapter 12, there's no more miracles. And up until chapter 12, there's something like 9 or 10 miracles. Acts covers 30 years. I could be wrong about the no more miracles, but it's pretty close to no more miracles at a certain point in the in the book of Acts. But we always talk about, we only have the miracles that that we saw in the book of, compressed 30 years into 28 chapters, which in your Bible is probably 25 pages. Just 30 years compressed that. So you look at some of these Old Testament times. Old Testament goes from, we won't even count the creation and all that stuff because that was like 2,000 years up until chapter 10. But go from Abraham. Abraham to Jesus was 2,000 years. Okay. How many pages do you have in your Bible that cover those 2,000 years? And then it opens up some when you get to the New Testament, because the New Testament covers 50 years, 60 years. Definitely last apostle. Well, if you include Revelation and it's later, maybe you got 100 years, but yeah, you don't have much after 50 AD as far as 50, 60 AD as far as the happenings that are in there. So now all of a sudden you've got the New Testament that's a third the size of the Old Testament. So it's opened up a little bit more. But even in the Gospels, the Gospels compressed the first 30 years of Jesus. I'll take back. How old was Jesus when he died? 33?
33.
Huh?
33.
So the first 32 and a half or plus years are half of the Gospels. And the second half of the Gospels is the last week of his life. You look at where he rides into Jerusalem, it's halfway through that gospel. So half of the Gospels, 1 week. There's one where you get a panoramic view of what's happening. So going back to these, these guys and what they knew and how they understood Jesus when he gave them the, I don't know. And so let's see, we have Thomas. I'm sorry.
Right.
Oh, Ray. I see Ray.
I wonder how often that God does, or Jesus works a miracle in our lives, and we write it off as being nothing more than luck.
Well, could be. I don't know how you measure it, but
Nothing is you let it.
yeah, I don't know, yeah, I don't know. Anybody here have a miracle, I mean, that they would say, not just, I don't wanna put down miracles, you know, at all, but by the same token, Wanda, microphone, please.
Yeah.
Oh,
there it is.
Trying to-
Yeah, it's on. I have names. My niece's husband had a double aneurysm. And the doctors determined that he was not going to live, or that he was, brain dead. And one of his friends came to the hospital the night before they were going to pull the plug and talked to him. He was, in a coma. And he asked questions of him and told him to respond yes or no by squeezing the hand. And he did respond. So his friend went out to the nurse and said, he's not brain dead. He's responding to questions. So it just so happened that the best neurosurgeon in the world was at the U of M. My nephew was taken to HCMC in Minneapolis, and they called that surgeon over, and he performed surgery on him, and he's alive today. That was a miracle that he lived. He should have, well, and they figured that the aneurysm was outside the brain, not in the brain. And also my youngest grandchild was born with a viral infection. And the doctors told them we've done everything we can. All that's left is prayer. And he's alive today. He's 31. Those are two modern day miracles of my family.
So I guess I would ask the question. Can we try to eliminate the idea of a miracle because things happen a certain way? Or do you trust that it happened? So an example, I was for I was in well, I didn't know this, but I get down to Texas and I thought it was going to pick me up. Said that the Uncle Martin is leaning. Dad, you don't have. I said, no, I didn't do that because it just happened. It's true. So the next day, that I went to see him. I went and so that said, if you've ever seen it, and hasn't, that's what it must look like. Because of that, and I set my back. I said that. Sat up straight in bed, opened his eyes, and looked at me, and went back. Because they thought he was past the point. No. That voice. They say that you heard it last. I was and we hugged each other. I could not believe it. I don't even know what class I was.
Well, we all say praise the Lord. So we react like it is, or we react like God's hand is in it to do something with the doctors.
Right.
We don't know how God works, works miracles, and I just don't know how many there are. And I think the question was, do we recognize them, today? And we probably don't recognize, and that, or we don't give God the credit for whatever happened, but God may have worked through other people to make it happen. But then again, when Paul, is it Paul? I know Paul and Elisha did the same kind of thing where there was a dead young girl and then they, lay on them and do whatever they do and then the kids come back to life. So I don't know. Okay, where do we live? Thomas. We all know Thomas.
Can I ask you a question about, in this little paragraph about Bartholomew, it says that he had preached in various regions, as Armenia and India and Ethiopia. So,
Are you on the back page?
yeah, I'm on this.
Yeah, we'll get to that later. But, what I've got on there is what happened to the apostles, and I got short little blurbs, and we'll cover those later, because what did happen to those guys when Jesus rose from the dead, spent his 40 days on earth, ascended into heaven, having told them to go into all the world to make disciples, is that they didn't just stay in town. They went away. Who's that? Is that me? No. Anyway, they went. And so some of them went, like you said, to India. Thomas went to India, I think.
Yeah, somebody, yeah.
Yeah, like that. So, and then they get martyred in these foreign countries, like that. But again, that's that driven. We talk about, and I don't do this to guilt anybody, but we won't go talk to our next door neighbor about Jesus. But here these guys, I mean, remember, they had to go by foot. They didn't have mopeds. They had to go by foot to, I don't know how far India is from, Israel. I know it's over there somewhere. I mean, it's not as far as India is, from here. But they went. You guys, I'm sure some of you have. You ever read the stories of missionaries? I mean, these 18th century missionaries and what they
Hawaii.
Pardon?
Hawaii.
To Hawaii? No. Oh, you're talking about going to Hawaii and living in Hawaii. Okay, well, no, you said Hawaii. I go aloha. But I mean, some of these missionaries, now, some of them, they need to be spanked because they left their families and neglected their families. I mean, they felt that there was a call of God for them to go to deepest, darkest Africa and left their wives and families in poverty. And you can read those stories too, like that. So they may have misread a little bit on how they should have provided and maybe gone on more short term. But I'm not going to tell them that they were, that they were wrong. But you read some of these stories and the fact that, some of these guys set up missionary things that converted whole countries. Who was it? Hudson Taylor in China. Who did you say?
Hawaii.
Hawaii. Well, yeah, but wait. I don't know if that's a missionary journey. I mean,
That is a missionary journey.
I'm gonna go suffer for the Lord. I'm going on a mission.
Yes.
Hawaii was the first missionary to go from the Church of England,
Yeah,
and they were harsh, mean, dude, really harsh.
yeah.
They were tough.
But that's the way people were back in the day. I mean, no, seriously, no, we don't think about that. We take a lot of people who we look at now and we say, man, they were mean and they were, I don't know, they were racist, but they were the people of their day, and that's the way life was lived. And then we want to take it all away from them and say, oh, we'll learn from them too on those kind of things. We don't do that today. You look at the way, you read any of, Martin Luther's debates and his writings and debates. And the polemics that he used, polemics is just a strong way of debating. I mean, you call each other names and, I mean, you read it today and you're horrified by it. But everybody was polemic. Nowadays, everybody's unbending. I don't mean to hurt your feelings. Here's what I want to tell you that I think you may be wrong. I'm not saying which way is better or not, but back in that day, polemics was the way that you discussed all kinds of things. I mean, you just beat the guy up verbally until he dropped. And that's where that was. Okay. So Thomas, you know, we got doubting Thomas. Thomas is also known as Didymus, which is the word for a twin. So he may have had a twin brother, you know? And again, we don't know who that is, but that's what Didymus, means. And we know the doubting Thomas thing, right?
Yeah.
And it's too bad. He gets bad rap. Being called doubting Thomas, because he just asks for evidence. He's the one who, when Jesus was talking about following him, and he asked if they wanted to leave, and he said, "Where are we going to go?" Or he asked about it, and he says, Jesus says, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. And you're going to come along." And they said, "Well, where else are we going to go?" And he was the one that said that. So yeah, it's kind of a bad rep for the, the doubting Thomas. Let me just finish up these last couple of guys. Thaddeus is also known as Judas, the son of James. It says, although not extensively mentioned, he is listed amongst the disciples in the Gospel of Matthew and Mark. This falls into the, I'd say that's not extensively mentioned. Simon the Zealot is sometimes identified as Simon the Zealot, suggesting a possible association with the Jewish Zealot movement. I don't think that him and Matthew got along at all. Because Matthew worked for the Jerusalem government, tax collector, and Simon Zealot, he was part of the movement trying to overthrow the leadership in Jerusalem. Jesus has these two paired up, We have no information about his, what his, political activities were, other than what we know about the Zealot movement, like that. And then you got Judas Iscariot, and everybody knows about Judas Iscariot, right? Anybody name their kids or grandkids Judas? No. For some reason we don't do that. I'd like to name my kid the Bible character. I got one here for you. How about Judas? The funny part is there's several people in the Bible named Judas that are perfectly good people, but we don't do it. Well, we'll finish up there. I've got, if you look on your page where I've got disciples there, and then you got a bunch of other people that are also followers of Jesus, and we'll talk about that next time. And we were talking about what makes an apostle, a capital A apostle, and then some were saying, well, they're the ones who, saw Jesus during his ministry and saw his act, and all these people did too. For some reason, they got some separate role. And some of those also are mentioned just briefly in the text. Figure if they get mentioned, they must be pretty important. They must have some important where their name, where their name comes up. Even where, and I'm trying to keep this just the people with Paul, with Jesus, okay? Because we have other groups of disciples that traveled around with Paul and Peter after Jesus was gone. But I'm trying to keep this just, these people here, the ones that traveled with Jesus. And they traveled with Jesus and they saw the miracles and they did all these, and they get one mention, honorable mention, which if nobody ever noticed, It's one more mention than I get. I get no mention, so their one mention is good. So we'll go over them, we'll go over them next week. All of these people played into the ministry of Jesus. Anybody have a question? Hi, Linda. I didn't get to say hi to you, Linda. No question? Let's close with Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Thine is the kingdom, and the power, and glory forever and ever.
Thanks, Gene.
Change